right, good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Guidance Department, I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight and taking the time to attend our financial aid symposium for parents and for students, and the process in learning a little bit more about what to expect over the next several months in applying for colleges and financial aid. Before we get started, I'd like to begin with a short prayer, which coincidentally is titled Prayer for Financial Peace. So if you would all bow your heads with me. In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, I know that you are the source of all my good and that you provide for me in all ways. Please help me release the fears that block me from receiving your gifts. Please help me feel the emotions of peace, gratitude, and financial security, and to know that I am your child upon whom you bestow great blessings. I now stay open to divine guidance, which perfectly leads me to situations, people, and opportunities that are part of your plan for my financial peace. I now see and feel myself and everyone else as completely financially secure, and my heart overflows with gratitude and joy at the abundant universe that you have created. St. Francis de Sales, pray for us. All right, so I'd like to introduce to you all our speakers for the evening. Our guest speaker is Mary Cannon. Mary Cannon is the Director of Student Financial Services at Hondros College of Nursing in Westerville. Mary has been a wonderful resource for our students and families over the past several years, and we are fortunate to have her with us this evening to share her expertise. Joining Mary is the Associate Director of Student Financial Services at Hondros College of Nursing, Emily Goldman. In addition to their roles at Hondros, both Mary and Emily serve on the Ohio Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators Outreach Committee. Please join me in welcoming Mary and Emily.
Well, good evening. We're going to try to go pretty quickly, but one thing I want to say is if at any time during the presentation you guys have a question or you just want some further clarification, please don't hesitate to stop us. Throw your hand up, get our attention somehow, and that way we can address things as we go along. And then just to also let you know, if there's something maybe you don't want to address during the presentation, or you have a question that maybe is distinct or unique, we're going to be around afterwards, so you can grab us afterwards and ask questions that way as well. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'm going to tell you what, we're going to move really quickly through a lot of information. So again, if you have questions or if you want us to clarify something further, just throw your hand up, and I saw a hand, but you're putting it back down again. I think it was a directional hand in this case. Because we haven't started, so we'll just let that hand go. So the topics we're going to discuss tonight, we're going to start out with what is financial aid, just kind of give you the U.S. Department of Education's definition of what is financial aid. We're going to talk about cost of attendance, COA, and one thing I want to say as well is, did everybody get the handouts that were up front? There's a lot of great handouts, and one thing that every financial aid administrator across the country does is that we all use acronyms. So if I use an acronym tonight without telling you what that acronym is, stop me and I'll tell you what they stand for. But in our world, we use acronyms for everything because the government gives us names far too long for us to speak every time we have to. So there is an acronym sheet. I think we sent that. We brought that this evening. There's a sheet with all the acronyms that are used everywhere. So please grab that one if you don't grab anything else tonight. So we're going to talk about cost of attendance, or COA. We're going to talk about expected family contribution, or EFC. We're going to talk about financial need. We're going to talk about the categories of financial aid, the types and the sources that they come from. We're going to talk about the free application for federal student aid, which is the FAFSA. I'm actually going to turn it over to Emily at that point because she deals with this every day, all the time. And then we're going to touch on some special things like special circumstances, verification, etc. So what is financial aid? And I will tell you that we put this definition in the Ohio, or OASFA, the Ohio Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. We put this definition in our presentations because this is what the government tells us, and this is what the government will say to you, is that the definition of financial aid, or financial aid, is really just to support families in paying for higher education. So financial aid in no way was ever intended to fully cover costs. Now, in some cases it does, but in many cases it doesn't. So it really is just there to support families to pay for higher education. So let's get right into what is cost of attendance. And before we get into the items on the slide, the tuition and fees, etc., there's a couple of things I want to talk about, and that is, I think I want to just kind of bring it back down to a real level, like sticker price versus what the real cost is. And we can look at this from two different angles. We can talk about sticker price, which is what you are seeing charged to you versus what's that real cost. And so the real cost oftentimes isn't what is being charged to you, because that cost is coming down based on whatever kind of financial aid that you can bring in to help bring that cost down. Another way to look at sticker price versus cost is cost of attendance, and that's really what this slide focuses on. And I'll say that cost of attendance, or that sticker price, we call it in the higher ed world sticker price because the U.S. Department of Education mandates that we all have a cost of attendance, a published cost of attendance. So when you're out there looking on a website, you might see a published cost of attendance, and it includes a lot of things, and a lot of those things aren't things that you're going to be billed for. So we can, when we're talking about published costs or your sticker price versus what you're going to pay, that's what we're going to talk about here. So let's first look at what makes up a cost of attendance. So there are really two components. There's direct costs and indirect costs. And the easiest way for you to remember these things are those things that are billed. They'll be on your student's bill when it comes in the mail or when it comes in your student's portal or however they get it. Those are called direct costs. Indirect costs are those things that you're likely to encounter as a cost going to college, but they're not necessarily going to appear on a bill. So tuition and fees will always be billed. No doubt about that, that's going to be on your bill. Room and board, if your student actually lives on campus, that's a billable charge. It's going to be on a bill. But if we talk about books and supplies, many schools today don't charge books. So some programs do. It's part of the program, but most often books are outside of what you see billed. And your books can range anywhere from like maybe $5 or $10 for a paperback, all the way up to $200 and $300 for some of your higher end courses for a single book. So you can see that books vary in cost significantly. Transportation is also another indirect cost, and every school has to make determinations on these indirect costs. So what does the average student in the average biology program pay for books? So that might be a part of that student's cost of attendance. What does the average commuter student in Central Ohio going to OSU pay for transportation every day to get to OSU? That might be a part of that COA. And then miscellaneous and personal expenses. And again, we oftentimes use statistics from the area in which the college are located to make up those costs. So all of that said, that cost of attendance that you'll see published on a website or maybe on literature that you're receiving for the college is not necessarily what you're going to be billed. The billable costs are what those direct costs are. Those indirect costs are just required by the U.S. Department of Education so families can make an informed decision about how much money do they really need to send their child off to college. So let's go on to expected family contribution. So we're talking about two really important things here: COA, cost of attendance, and EFC, expected family contribution. So EFC, expected family contribution, I've said it 3 times now, expected, but I want you to know that even though we call it expected family contribution, it really is just a number that financial aid counselors across the country use to make determinations of need and how much financial need-based financial aid a student will be eligible to receive. And the EFC is actually calculated once you complete the FAFSA. You'll enter all this information. Emily's going to talk in depth about the FAFSA, but you enter all this information, a huge calculation goes on in the backside. We don't do those by hand anymore, and then it magically produces an EFC, an expected family contribution. And there are basically For a dependent student, there's two parts to an EFC. There's a student's contribution and a parent contribution, because you're going to be putting in two sets of information. You're going to be putting in students' income information and assets and parent income information and assets. So now that we know the two main components to financial aid everywhere in the United States, let's talk about how everybody determines need. It is a very, very simple calculation. It's cost of attendance minus EFC equals need. And the couple things I want to just talk about when we talk about need and cost of attendance and EFC. When we talk about cost of attendance is a variable. It is going to be different no matter what college you go to. Every college is going to have a different cost of attendance for a lot of reasons. Because tuition rates are different, depending on the part of the state, it's different. And to be honest with you, because financial aid counselors or departments have the ability to set their own, not one of us is the same. So we're setting different COAs for our colleges across the country. So COA is going to be a variable based on what college you choose. But your EFC is going to be a constant. When you complete your FAFSA and you receive your expected family contribution on your student aid report, that EFC will be sent to every college that you ask it to be sent to. It will be the same EFC everywhere. So I think that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea to say, if you were going to, I think somebody asked me about a Miami University earlier, their COA is going to be much higher than a Columbus State. So depending on what your EFC is, depending on where you go to college or where you apply to, your need can be bigger or smaller based on that COA. So just something to think about as you guys are receiving award notifications. So the next topic that I really want to talk about is a question that we get all the time. Well, how much financial assistance am I eligible to receive? We just talked about COA, the cost of attendance. Well, the cost of attendance at every institution determines how much total financial aid your student is eligible to receive. They're not eligible to receive an indefinite amount of money to go to college, and the COA defines that. So if your cost of attendance is $60,000, your student will not be able to have any more than $60,000 in all their aid sources, whatever those sources might be. And then the EFC, as we talked about, is what determines need, and that calculation will determine how much of that $60,000 you're allowed to have in need-based funding. So need-based and non-need-based funds, just like we said, can't exceed COA. And then another point that I want to bring up is that funds are awarded based on academic years. So it's not going to be for the full 4 years, although we are working towards, in the industry, we're working towards, and hopefully many colleges across the country are showing what it's going to cost for all 4 years and not just a year, because really you shouldn't just trying to fund a single year. It's all about starting and completing, not just starting college. They really need to complete. So I'm hoping that a lot of colleges are getting on board with really showing you what that full cost is for 4 years, and maybe in some cases committing to locking that tuition for students so they are able to really have a very clear idea of what it's going to cost them. Another thing is the COA and the EFC, I shouldn't switch that yet, are both subject to change every year. The EFC especially is subject to change because you have to do a new FAFSA every academic, or every year your students in college, every October 1, FAFSA will open for you, and you have to do a new FAFSA. So that EFC will definitely change, and cost of attendance is also likely to change just because I don't think there's any schools, I think that there are some state schools here in Ohio that are on a tuition freeze, but for the most part, as soon as that freeze is lifted, those COAs will be going up because those costs will be going up. Okay, so let's talk about categories of financial aid. We've talked about how we determine need, so now there's need-based and non-need-based aid. And we have a couple of other things that I want to talk about before we get into what is need-based, what is not need-based. I want to talk about merit aid versus need-based aid. And a lot of times need-based aid is confused with merit aid. And the reason I say that is because as they come through, they're usually on the upper end of your award letter. So let me just say that. When you get award notifications, you're going to see a lot of need-based funds, and you'll also see merit or academic scholarships. Those were going to be at the top of your award letter. So merit-based aid is usually awarded like on some type of a merit. So whether it's academics, maybe it's music, whatever. Merit awards are based on a talent for the most part or for academic achievement. And need-based aid is really just what it says. There has been a need calculation done to determine how much need your student is eligible to receive. And so the best example I can give you is a federal Pell Grant. So that is usually the first need calculation that a college will do is the federal Pell Grant. And that is a need-based grant. Okay, so we talked about the difference between need and non-need. Now let's talk about the different types of financial aid. We only have a single slide for this, but I'm going to try to go quickly through each one of these types. There's basically 4 categories of financial aid. And those 4 categories fall into what we call self-help aid or gift aid. So gift aid can be need-based or merit-based. And so we usually start with scholarships. And again, scholarships at institutions are a huge part of your students' financial aid package. Oftentimes they're going to be based on academics. And you know that old saying that says, you know, you got to do your best in high school to get the money for college. It really is true, guys. And the higher end GPAs and test scores are going to get the bigger merit awards. But there are other awards. It's not just academics. So we talked about music. For just about every talent there is, colleges oftentimes offer awards for those or scholarships for those. So you just need to look into those when you go to your different colleges and check those out. So scholarships are what we call gift aid. They don't have to be repaid. A couple of pointers here though. When you get your award notifications, my suggestion to you is that if you have scholarships, grants, or any type of fund, understand what it takes to get that award next year. So if your student gets an academic scholarship and they have to maintain a 3.0, you better know that they need to maintain a 3.0, because if they do not, that money will disappear, and then that's more money out of your pocket if you don't find another scholarship or grant to replace it. So understand the criteria for every award that your student receives. Grants are the same way. So sometimes, I will say this, grants can be federal, grants can be institutional, grants can be state, grants can come from a lot of different places. So again, it's best to understand the criteria that grant was awarded on, and then also what's the renewal for it? Does it automatically renew? Do they have to do something to get it again? Is the FAFSA required every year? Again, know what is required to get that aid every year. It is extremely important. We're going to go around now to work study and basically employment. So loans and employment are what we call self-help. It's pretty self-explanatory, self-help. They have to do something to get the funds. And I won't go on my soapbox tonight talking about work study, but the one thing I will say is that the federal work study program or a college work study program is a great way for your student to connect with that college campus. And it's been found, and there's been a lot of studies done, that students who work in the federal work study program or work for the college in the college work program are more likely to succeed, more likely to retain, and more likely to graduate. So all of that said, if your student is offered a federal work study position or a college work study position, this is what I hear all the time. Yeah, I just want my student to go to school and study. Well, parents, that happens in some cases, but in a lot of cases, not all the time. So why not have them working, connecting, having a support group for them? And I'll tell you what, work studies for the most part are just like regular employees. You know, we take care of our work study students. Across the country, work studies are taken care of. It goes by their schedule. And one thing to remember though, those students are going to be paid directly. So if you want to work out an agreement with your student that says, hey, you get to keep half of it, put that in your pocket, maybe buy whatever you want with that, the other half you have to put toward your bill, that's an agreement you guys are going to have to make with your students, because no school is permitted to automatically take that money and apply it to an outstanding balance. So just important to know for federal work study. And then lastly, self-help or loans. Yes?
What is the normal hours per week of work study student for workforce?
So most schools have a limit. It's under 15, but the average is 8 to 10. 8 to 10 hours a week is what they do. Yeah, and it's between, and they do it between courses, so whatever your course schedule is, they're going to schedule it right between that. Oftentimes they can work right on campus, but there are also opportunities that are really fabulous opportunities, like what we call community service, where a lot of times students can actually work in schools, like in reading, and they can do math and reading with students that are at local elementary schools. So that would be a community service, and it's a great opportunity because that looks wonderful on a resume. So again, can't say enough about federal work study. Last, self-help or loans. There's a lot of different loans. I'm going to talk about them. Emily's going to talk about them a little bit at the end as well. But loans are what we call self-help. They have to be repaid. I will say that again, loans, repaid. So if you ever see loan, you should automatically assume repay. So that is not free money. It's not a bad thing. And in fact, studies show that students that invest in their education are more likely to succeed, more likely to retain, more likely to graduate. But again, it has to be responsible borrowing. So that's all I'll say about loans. Sources of financial aid. There's the federal government, the states, colleges and universities, private sources, and employers. Let's talk about the federal government first, because the federal government really is the largest provider of financial aid. A lot of times I think there are some institutions that will argue and say, oh no, institutions are the largest. But I'll be honest with you, it is true. The U.S. Department of Education is the largest provider of financial aid. It's primarily awarded on financial need. The Pell Grant program is the largest grant program in the country. There's also FSEOG, we're going to look at those here in a minute. But it's also because a majority of the loan program is a need-based program. So that's why we say the majority of it is based on need. You have to apply every year using the FAFSA. That's what we just talked about. Every October 1, the FAFSA will open October 1, so you can begin doing that then. And then you have to meet certain eligibility requirements to be eligible for Title IV financial aid. So let's just quickly look at the federal student aid programs. There's the federal Pell Grant. It is the largest need-based grant program in the country. It does have a pretty tight EFC range. Emily, can I pick your brain for that? The EFC range?
Up to 5,674.
So it's a 0 to 5,000, and I apologize, Emily deals with this every day, and it's a good excuse for me not to. But if you have a 0 to a 5,674 EFC, you're going to be in a Pell Grant eligibility range. It seems like a pretty big range, but I'm going to tell you what, that's a tight range. So those are our neediest students across the country. Pretty tight Pell Grant range. The Iraq, Afghanistan Service Grant, we do have an acronym for this, I won't give it to you, but these are students who are not necessarily Pell eligible, but they've had a family parent who have served either in Iran or the Afghanistan war, and so they actually become eligible for Pell, even though they don't have a Pell eligible EFC. And I don't think there's any EFC requirements on that. No. We're starting to see more of those now, as I'm sure you can understand. This came out several years ago, and now as we're seeing those individuals old enough, those that have children old enough to go to college, we're starting now to see students that are able to use this grant. The federal supplement, I'm just going to call it FSEOG. This is one of those things we hate to say out all those words, so we're going to call it FSEOG. The FSEOG grant is a grant that is what we call campus-based funds, so the schools get a bucket of money and they award it to their Pell-eligible students. We're going to talk about deadlines. This is one of those grants. If you don't meet a deadline and you're eligible to receive it, even though you're eligible to receive it, there's a good chance you won't if you don't do this right away. But maybe as a sophomore or maybe as a second-term freshman, you might see this come up on an award. And all I'm saying to you is just be informed about it. Understand what it is, understand what the requirements are, because if your student, they'll have to sign an agreement to serve, if they don't serve and they don't teach for however long in a high need area, then that grant is going to turn to a loan. Not a bad thing, because in some cases those students couldn't afford to go to school otherwise, but we all know that our children can go off to school, they're going to be a teacher, they're going to be a teacher, they're going to be a teacher, they're a freshman at OSU, I don't want to be a teacher. So all of a sudden, we've changed our mind and now we want to be a veterinarian, who knows. But teacher may not be that goal. It changes. So I just want you to be informed and understand what could happen if they have a teach grant. A federal work study, we talked about. Federal work study is the federal work program, but colleges also have a college work program. And then the federal direct loan program. And this is actually the program where students borrow. And the criteria are just the FAFSA, but the limits on what students are able to borrow is very scripted for us. Your students will only be able to borrow a very specific amount as they progress through college. So no more. They can take out less, and we often encourage students to take out less, but you can't say, well, how come I can't borrow more in a sub-loan? Well, you can't because it's need-based, or you can because you can only have so much in federal student loans. And then lastly, the Federal Plus Loan Program. It is under review at this time, but I believe we'll have the Federal Plus Loan Program for a little while longer. But this is a program where parents can borrow to fund their students' education. So it is another way for parents to actually pay for college. The loan is in your name, can never be transferred to the students though, parents, just know that. So if you borrow under the Plus Loan, that's your loan. It's a loan, has to be repaid, and it is your loan, not the student's. Let's talk about states just really quickly. There are residency requirements here in the state of Ohio. You have to be a resident of the state. You have to be a resident for a certain amount of time before your student would be eligible. It's awarded, most of it is awarded on need as well here in the state of Ohio, but there are some grants and some scholarships that are awarded off of merit here. The state of Ohio also uses the information from the FAFSA, so there is no separate application for Ohio. And then the deadlines do vary by state. Here in Ohio, it will be a year from October 1. So you have to file that FAFSA sometime between October 1 and October 20 of the following year to be eligible for state aid. Another important point here in the state of Ohio, your student actually has to attend a college in Ohio to be eligible for any program that they would qualify for. If they choose to go out of state, state money in Ohio does not follow them. They cannot take it with them. So let's just look at some of the common state programs. There's the Ohio College Opportunity Grant, the Ohio War Orphans, Ohio National Guard is also a big state program. The nurse education, I'm just going to call it NELP. This is for students, this is a loan program, but this is for students that are in nursing programs. But here in the state of Ohio, we are committed, and I say we, Ohioans, we're committed to forgiving all of our NELP loans. So if students in a nursing program actually finish their program and actually go into nursing, then the state of Ohio is committed to wiping those loans clean. They have to serve, I want to say 3 to 5 years, don't quote me on that, it does change occasionally, but they have to just do their job for a few years and that loan goes away. In state, yeah, they have to work in the state of Ohio. But it's a pretty significant amount. I think that in some cases they can borrow up to $14,000 a year to have that loan wiped away. So that's a pretty big loan. Now most undergrad students won't get that amount.
And there is a separate application for that.
Yes, for the NELP, it is, that's good to know. Yes, and your colleges and universities should be telling your students about it. If they're nursing students, they should be notifying them and telling them to apply for this. Colleges and universities, they are another source of financial aid. They're a pretty big source. In fact, you can see some pretty hefty merit awards coming on your award notifications. Those merit awards can be anywhere from, maybe $2,000 to $3,000 all the way up to $15,000 to $20,000. So colleges and universities have a lot of money to award. It could be in the form of a gift, like a scholarship, or it might be self-help, like a college work program. They often will use the information straight from the FAFSA. I don't know of too many colleges that make you fill out a separate application to get the merit or anything like that that you're eligible to receive. But deadlines for colleges really do exist. And again, if you don't meet a deadline and you were otherwise eligible for a grant and you didn't meet that deadline, you're not going to get that money. Private sources, don't want to say too much about this, except for there is a ton of money out there, but it's just like a part-time job to get it. And I really mean that. So you have to work at looking for scholarships. You have to look at everything. You know, look at those things, anything about your family, anything about what you're interested in, anything like maybe that your family member has done, maybe skydiving or anything like that. Any of those interests should be keywords that you're using in searches for scholarships. And then one source that we like to suggest that I don't know that too many people use, and it's up here and it's very hard to see, I know, but it is actually from the
Department of Labor.
from the Department of Labor, and it's a comprehensive list. It is a huge list, and you can filter it down, but it is a great list, and that is super small, and I apologize for that. And if you can't see it and you're interested in it, grab us afterwards, we'll tell you what it is. But it actually is on the Department of Labor's website, and it's actually one that the U.S. Department of Education recommends. So I want to direct you there. And then employers. For a long time, we saw employers were very generous in helping employees, students go to college. Then we hit the recession, we hit some hard times. Employers pulled back that money as well as tuition reimbursement. But I'm telling you that we're seeing that go back up again. We're seeing employers everywhere that want to invest in their employees, that want to invest in their employees' children. So always check with your employers to see if maybe they have a scholarship or maybe they have grant programs that your students can apply for. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Emily, and she's going to go over FAFSA.
All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. The most important word in that acronym is free. You do not have to pay to complete the FAFSA. So if you get to a site and you get to the end and they want to charge you, you are on the wrong site. Stop, do not pay anything, move on and go to FAFSA.ed.gov. That is going to be the site you need to use. Again, we don't want you to have to put any money out there to complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA is one large calculation. It's going to ask a lot of different questions to calculate that EFC, that expected family contribution, that not only does the government use it, but all of our financial aid offices across the country use to help determine need in the financial aid office. The FAFSA is available in both English and Spanish. I don't know if they have any other languages out there, but currently it's in English and Spanish. It can be filed anytime throughout the academic year. It does open up October 1st for the next year, and we do encourage students to fill it out. For seniors, go ahead and you're going to want to fill out that application starting October 1st. Juniors, just put it in your mind that you're going to do it next October 1st. And there are some priority deadlines for colleges for FAFSA applications. We've given you, it's not a comprehensive list around the state. It is a list that we sent out. It's a survey that we sent out to colleges around the state of Ohio, and those are the ones that have replied to us with priority deadlines, if they do have one, what those are. Just to point out, there are some that are as soon as could be November, and definitely there are some that have December deadlines, and those are really important because those could help determine eligibility and things like that FSCOG grant. So, you know, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and fill out that FAFSA. You could put a number of colleges on there, so anything that you're thinking, you know, that you're interested in, and then you can always, you know, pare that down. All right, there are several ways that you can fill out the FAFSA. You can fill out the FAFSA on the web, and you can also do it on your phone. It is now mobile enabled. There is a new My Financial Aid student mobile app. So if students want to download the app, they can fill out the FAFSA very, very easily on the app. That app is also going to be utilized to track any loans that they're going to have, and they can use it throughout their college career, and then even the hope is to have that app be used throughout their entire repayment if they take out federal student loans.
We do have paper or PDF copies of the FAFSA. The funny thing is they don't print the FAFSA on paper anymore, so you do have to have the ability to get it on PDF. So if that is something that you do need, you can call your financial aid office and they can print off a copy. There is two other options: is FAFSA on the phone, and also financial aid administrators do have the ability to fill out the FAFSA and directly submit it to the central processing service. Again, the last three, the paper, the phone option, and the FAA access are not ideal ways to fill out the FAFSA. There are significant delays on those, but if there is a family that is in a situation that can't do it on the web or on a mobile application, there are other ways to fill out the FAFSA. We do encourage using a computer to fill out the FAFSA, either using the FAFSA on the web application or using the mobile application. The reason is there are some built-in edits and skip logic, so you're only going to be answering the questions that are important. So you're not going to have to answer every single question on the FAFSA. I know if you've watched the news, you've seen Senator Alexander take out his FAFSA and roll it out all, 25 pages of it. Okay, it's really not that long. You can use all of the skip logic and all of the edits, and you're just going to answer the questions that pertain to you and your family. It also allows you to use the IRS data retrieval tool, so you can automatically upload your tax information directly into the FAFSA. All of that information is masked, so your information is secure, and that way you don't have to fill out every financial section of the FAFSA, and that you know that is the most accurate tax information that's coming directly from the IRS. Again, all that information is masked. You actually don't even see the actual numbers that come up. It will say that it was directly imported from the IRS, and so there is no way for someone to see the numbers behind those things. There are also detailed instructions and help along the way, so if you have questions about something or you need a definition, there are helpful toolbars along the side, and the FAFSA does a really nice job of giving you exact definitions of what they're looking for and what not to include. So again, that's another reason we want you to use either the FAFSA on the web application on your desktop, on your laptop, or or on your phone. Many students are going directly to the phone now to do it, and they have made that mobile application so it's easy to read and complete via phone. You have the ability to check your status online. You're able to make edits online. You can go back in and make corrections to the FAFSA, and the processing time is is reduced as well. So, all right. In order to complete your FAFSA and then to do it electronically, you're going to complete an FSA ID. And of all the FAFSA nights that I have been to and all the help that I have given to families, what trips people up the most is this FSA ID. It's not the FAFSA. It's creating this username and password. So tonight, it'll be a long night. So tomorrow, or this weekend, if you haven't already done so, I want you to go ahead and create an FSA ID. For seniors, your student is going to do one themselves, and then one parent is going to do one as well. And when you do one, yes?
If you have two kids entering at the same time, is it separate ID or one ID?
For the parent, it's just the same parent ID. Okay. But for the student, it's each student, yes. With that information also has to be,
So do I have a child already in college?
you can use your current one. Yes, but your upcoming student will have a new one.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. Your senior, your junior, your senior will need their own. But your student who's already in college can use their current one, and you as a parent will use your current one. You don't have to have a separate one for each child.
For my junior college student, it was mine. She has her own, and I use the one I already established for the older child.
Yeah, the parent one stays the same.
Okay.
Yep. You will need separate information. So, mom or dad, if you're filling it out for your student, one, make your student fill it out. It's their stuff. It's their information. It's also their FAFSA. We want to make sure that your email addresses and your phone numbers are all different. They cannot match. They cannot have the same information. Yes? If you have an old PIN number, you have to have a new FSA ID. If you do have an FSA ID, you can use the same one as if you were the student and now are a parent, you can use the same one. Other questions? See, I told you the FSA ID is the hang-up. So go ahead and fill that one out tonight. You're going to want to write the username and password down. Keep it in a secure location, because if you fill it out every 4 years, you're never going to remember what it is from year to year. So just keep it in a secure location. You can tie your email address to it, and you can also tie your phone number to it. So if you do forget it, it can be texted to you or it can be emailed to you. And then seniors, you're not going to want to use your high school email address. You're going to want to use some sort of legacy address, because eventually your high school address will probably stop working, and so you're going to want to be able to access that email address the entire time you're in school. All right. FAFSA on the web, this is what the homepage is going to look like. You will either hit start a new FAFSA, or if you need to make a correction, you can say make a correction, and it'll take you back to where you left off on the FAFSA. The nice thing on the FAFSA now, it will, when you log in, you're going to tell the FAFSA if you're the student or if you're the parent. And so it'll only give you the questions that you can answer. So I always encourage families to fill this out together if they can. I would have the student drive, and so they're going to be filling out their information, and then they can hand it over to mom or dad when they ask for parent information. But this way, you're making sure that the right information goes in the right set of questions. You never want to have a situation where the parent is using their social security number in the student's social security number box, and that's just going to create a hassle and lots of corrections. So. All right, we wanted to talk about the My Student Aid app. Again, this came out 2 years ago, and it is now fully capable of having you complete a FAFSA from beginning to end. And so we wanted to show you what it was going to look like. You have the ability to, again, all of the information is masked, so it is secure. And it prompts the application to create a save key, so you don't have to, if you need to save it in the middle of it, you don't have to finish it right at the time. So you are able to go in and go back. It also allows you to tell your parent to go in and finish their section of it as well. You just log in with your FSA ID, username, and password, and it'll take you where you left off.
It doesn't have to be on the same.
Yes, that's another thing. The student can start it on their phone, and if you don't want to use the app, you can just do it on your laptop, and vice versa. So you can start at one place and finish at another place, and you can sign on the app, and the student can sign on the app, and the parent can sign on their desktop. So it allows you to go in and out kind of seamlessly, and allows the family to complete it however works best for them. It also tracks where you are and kind of gives you a check mark. Oh, you've completed this section, so you kind of can see where you are and how much more you have to go. It goes down to the agreement of the terms, and it gives you the confirmation that you have submitted it successfully, and it will give you an estimated EFC as well, just like you would see when you do it just on the FAFSA on the website. Right, we talked a little bit about the data retrieval tool, but again, it allows for certain tax information to go seamlessly into the FAFSA. Again, it is completely masked, so that information, if you're doing it, at home, at school, that information isn't going to show up for people to see. It will just say that it has been transferred from the IRS. It also reduces the amount of documents the financial aid office may need, because we know that is the most accurate information that came straight from the IRS. Just know that the FAFSA done in October will be asking for 2018 taxes. We use prior year. That way it allows the most number of families to have completed tax information, which reduces the number of corrections that families have to go into and make changes to. So just know that you'll be looking at 2018 taxes. There are certain situations that don't allow the data retrieval tool. The most common one is if a parent or a student who is married and they file separately, there is not a way for the IRS to import two sets of information into the FAFSA for a parent who files separately or for a student and a spouse that file separately, because there is we need to make sure that the correct permission is given. If a student has tax information, they can use the data retrieval because they have used their FSA ID to say, yes, I want my tax information uploaded. Same as the parent. If a parent files, is married and files jointly, they have given permission to use their tax information. There's no way for separate spouses to give information at the same time for separate returns. So that's the one that usually holds up people. So just know if you're not able to use it, you're just going to follow the prompts on the FAFSA. It's going to tell you exactly what line to look at, especially with 2018 taxes. We're down to just one 1040 form. We don't have separate forms anymore. The 1048 EZ went away. So it's just going to tell you exactly what line to look on. So look at line 7, you're going to enter that information. Look at line 23, you're going to enter that information. So it is helpful on telling you exactly what to put in what box on the FAFSA if you aren't able to use the data retrieval tool. We have any juniors in the house tonight. We've got the FAFSA on the web worksheet, and it allows you kind of do a preview of the FAFSA. So that's another nice resource. Or if you did file an extension, don't have your taxes done yet, you can use this worksheet, and it will give you some estimates. When you start to complete the FAFSA, the student's going to be asked for general information first, so social security number, citizenship status, marital status. These are all the same information that students are asked. We want to make sure that you are very careful when you fill the FAFSA out. You want to make sure that the information is accurate. So if your student doesn't know their social security number, it's time to get out the card, make sure that it's correct. The biggest error on the FAFSA is the wrong social security number, and it's a big hassle to fix it. It can be fixed. It'll just take some corrections to do it. So just make sure if your student doesn't know, it's a really good lesson for, this is a number that you're going to use in the future. Let's start to think about this, memorize this, and make sure that the information is accurate. The fewer number of corrections that you have to do is better for you. The next thing it's going to ask is student dependency status, and it's just a series of questions that the student answers yes or no to, and it helps determine whether or not parent information is going to be required on the FAFSA. If the student answers no, the student's going to be dependent, the FAFSA is going to prompt you to put parent information. If the student answers yes to one of those questions, the parent information is not going to be requested, but it will have some follow-ups if you answer yes to any of those questions to make sure that those are accurate information. A lot of times students get held up on legal guardianship. If you live at home, didn't go through the court system, and you live with mom and dad, you're not in legal guardianship. That's just your mom and dad. All right, the next set of information is going to ask for the tax information. Again, we highly encourage you to use the data retrieval tool if you're able to. You will put in things like AGI, income, and again, when you get to the income section, it's all going to be for the 2021 FAFSA will be for the 2018 tax year. All the rest of the information on the FAFSA is going to ask about current day. It will also ask about assets, and we wanted to bring up assets in FAFSA terms. So for FAFSA purposes, for federal financial aid, these are things that in the real world are assets, but in the financial aid world, we do not include these as assets. So the value of your primary residence is not included in FAFSA. Any traditional retirement plan is not included as an asset on the FAFSA. And if you have a small business under 100 employees or a family farm that also has under 100 employees, those assets are not included on the FAFSA. Those are things that are protected and not included in the FAFSA calculation. After the parent financial, yes?
How much all cash, checking, savings, any vehicles that have cash are accessible to the account?
So cash savings and checking is reported on the FAFSA, but it's not in addition to. So it is that it's already reported is included on the FAFSA. So what is the current?
You have to enter it. I mean,
You have to enter your cash savings and checking balance as of the day that you complete the FAFSA. So it's asking for an
do they
estimate.
verify that?
I'm sorry?
Is that a good verification process?
There is not, and then there's some more definition on the FAFSA about this. After the parent information, the student is going to have the same income information asked of them as well. Again, if your student filed taxes in 2018, go ahead and use that data retrieval tool, or fill out the information as requested. Some additional information that the FAFSA gathers is college information. So what school or schools is your student interested in attending? Currently you can add 10 schools to send your FAFSA information to. Just know that that is the largest correction that students do. They can choose 10 and then decide, I'm really only considering 5, and so they go back in and say, I'm not going to send my FAFSA information to these other 5. And then you can change those as well. It'll ask for housing plans, whether or not the student is planning on, and this is per college. So say your student is thinking, well, maybe I'll go to Ohio State, and I don't remember what their housing requirements are, but I'm going to live off campus. But I'm also thinking about Bowling Green, and I am going to live on campus. So your housing plan goes with the individual college. And then FAFSA preparer information, but we all encourage you to do fill out your FAFSA as a family and not pay someone. The FAFSA does require a signature. If you're doing that on the web, you're going to use your FSA ID as a signature. And then for other means of FAFSA, you are able to sign a physical piece of paper, but then that has to be sent in and processed. So we encourage you to do your FAFSA signature on the web. All right, frequent errors. So these are the things that we wanted to point out, so you're not having to do corrections to your FAFSA or having to wait for the financial aid office to contact you if there's some issue. Again, it's Social Security numbers, making sure that the Social Security numbers are correct and accurate. Real estate investment. So a lot of times, people put their own house as an asset. Again, your primary residence is not included on the FAFSA. And then household size, you're going to want to include student, parents, and siblings in the household. Again, the FAFSA is going to tell you exactly what they're looking for household size, so just read every question carefully. Once you complete that FAFSA, it goes to a central processing, and then the student will get a copy of their FAFSA after it's done processing, and then also any college that you put on that FAFSA will also get an institutional copy. So if you put a valid email address on the FAFSA, you will get your student aid report via email. If there's no valid email address on the FAFSA, it's going to be sent to the mailing address that you put on the FAFSA. And the student aid report is just a copy of all of the information that you put on your FAFSA, and it'll also include your expected family contribution index number on there. Again, if you do need to make corrections, you can go into the FAFSA. You'll just log in with your FSA ID, username, and password, and then you can go to the nice thing about the FAFSA at the top, and then also on the mobile app along the top will tell you each section. So it'll have the student demographic section, the financial information for the student, the financial information for the parent. So you just need to figure out which section you need to go to the page, and you can make any correction. Again, the correction that I said is most likely made is students choosing to add more or to take off the colleges that they want their information sent to. So we talked about award letters a little bit, so let's talk about communication methods that colleges use. We're now moving towards using a lot of student portals as institutions and sending email communication. So gone are the days that your mailbox is going to be full of financial aid award letters. A lot of things are going to come via email and come through student portals. That allows the student to see that information anytime they want. I know currently at our school, the student will see all their financial aid awards and also can accept or decline any of those awards via the student portal and see all of the things that they need to as far as their registration and their bill and things like that. Also, the email address that is assigned to the student at the college is going to be usually their primary means of communication that the college uses. So students should want to check your email. I know that that's not something that you always like to do, but that's going to be the way that we communicate as institutions. So that's where the information is going to be. It also allows us to keep that private identifiable information private. We are in the financial aid office. We see a lot of information, a lot of private information. We've got to keep that information secure, and so please know that we're not going to be sending things with Social Security numbers on them, and we ask that families don't send things back to us that have Social Security numbers on them. If your family is selected for a process called verification, we're going to be asking for other documentation. So just follow the directions that the school is asking you to do. Sometimes you could, there's a means to upload those things and send directly to the school, so we're not trying to, send personal information through email. So just follow the directions that your financial aid office gives you about how to secure documents back and forth. All right, we talked about using 2018 taxes, and it seems like it was a long time ago, especially when we're going to use a FAFSA that is for the 2021 academic year. We also know that a lot of things can change in 2 years. So financial aid offices do have the ability to make changes on the FAFSA that make that information more accurate. So we know that the families can go through a job loss or a death in the family or things like that. So if there's something that's come up in your family and you filled out the FAFSA as directed, and it's just not the clearest picture of what's going on, you're going to want to reach out to your financial aid office, let them know what's going on, and they're going to talk to you about what steps that you need to go through, what documentation you need to provide for them to walk you through that special circumstance paperwork. So we all, we all work with families every day, and we know that 2018 taxes is not always the best snapshot of what's going on in your family, or something else has happened, and so we just just need to reach out to that office. We all have different processes and different things that we ask for, but just know that is an option for parents, and we do know and families, so we do know that those things do come up. So yes. So some of those things, like I said, like loss of employment, if you're paying private school tuition for other younger siblings, those could be things that aren't always on, those things aren't on the FAFSA, but those are things that are very much real in the lives of families. And so if you think that there's something going on, or you simply have the question, talk to that financial aid office and have that conversation. Because financial aid administrators do have the ability to make changes to FAFSAs that families do not.
So on into secondary school tuition, does it ask parents if they're also paying for like DeSales students in addition to a college student? Does it ask them?
The FAFSA does not. But that is something that the financial aid administrators do have
judgment to sometimes include those extra costs in either looking at the student's cost of attendance or looking at it as, if it's a major expense every year, we have it is something that we can talk about.
It could reduce income, basically, but please know that every one of these things that's listed up here, every institution has the ability and the authority from the U.S. Department of Education to make the decision what they will accept as a professional judgment or a special circumstance. There are some schools across the country that will accept private high school, grade school, or secondary school tuition as a special circumstance, and there are others that will not. They will not consider it at all. So just something to know. That's one of them that some do, some don't, but most often it's usually just a loss of income. You can pretty much guarantee that every school will look at that. So it is, and I think Emily said it, but I want to say it again. She did say we have the ability that you don't. You have to enter the 2018 income. You don't have a choice to say I made $100,000 in 2018, but I'm making 50 today. You don't have that choice. You're required to enter the AGI of 2018. That's why the government gives us professional judgment to make those changes for you. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Following the processing of the FAFSA, there are certain FAFSAs that are selected for a process called verification, or just verifying that the information on the FAFSA is accurate and correct. Those can be selected straight from the Department of Education, or they can be institutionally selected. For instance, for institutional selection, if something doesn't make sense, if there's conflicting information, we have to resolve any sort of conflicting information, and so schools could use the verification process. That requires some paperwork from the families. If you've done the data retrieval tool, that's going to take a large chunk of the verification burden off. But just know if you're not able to use that, we're going to be asking for some tax information, and that will be tax information straight from the IRS, a transcript of those taxes. So about a third of FAFSAs are selected for verification. If your family's selected, I don't want you to fret, to panic. It's just another process. We want to make sure that that information is accurate. I've had students come in before, and you can't make an assumption on what's going on in a family, but this student had a lot of zeros in her AGI, and so I just wanted to make sure at the end of her AGI, I just wanted to make sure she meant to say that she had a $2 million AGI for 2016, or if she meant something else. She did not make $2 million that year, and so she was very thankful that we reviewed that and made sure that she was made the changes to her FAFSA, so she was awarded correctly and got the financial aid that she was truly eligible for. So we're just making sure that the students get the correct eligibility. So if you're selected for verification, you're just going to follow the directions that the institution gives you, what paperwork is going to be required, what they're going to need, and what deadlines, because you want to make sure, again, deadlines are very real, and you want to make sure that you're following those deadlines so your student has the ability to get all of the financial aid that they could have. A couple of things regarding verification that come up. Just know that the Department of Education doesn't ask financial aid administrators to be tax experts, but they do ask us to make sure that tax filing status on the FAFSA is correct. So if there are married folks out there that file in head of household, that's something that we do look at. That is a conflicting information that we do see on the FAFSA, and for families that have filed that way and it's not correct, depending on what circumstances were going on that tax year, they will be required to amend those taxes. Just want to point that out. Also, if you said that your When you fill out the FAFSA, it's going to ask if you've filed taxes, if you've already completed them, or if you're not going to file them that year, or if you will file them. Because we're now using what we call prior year, and we're using 2 years worth of tax information from 2 years ago. Tax information, that will file status is a big red flag to financial aid offices. Because the extension deadline for the IRS is 6 months, and there are very few extensions being granted beyond that. And so if you're if you're saying you're going to file your taxes from 2 years ago, that's a big red flag for institutions, and a lot of times those FAFSAs are selected, if not from the department, from the institution will be selected for verification. And then finally, we're going to just go over some commonly used gap financing tools. What we mean for gap is the direct cost of the institution minus the financial aid. If your financial aid isn't going to cover your direct costs, we call that remaining amount of money the gap. And so there are just some commonly used things that parents and students can use. We did talk about federal Parent Plus loans, and there are also private student loans out there. There are several private loans that both students and parents can utilize. So we're looking at any sort of private loan financing. You just want to do your research both with private loans and for federal plus loans if that's something that your family is looking at. You just want to do your due diligence, make sure you know what the interest rate is, what the origination fees are, and see what's going to be best for your family if that's the direction you want to go. Sometimes you can find a private loan that has better terms than the federal plus loan program. So you just want to go ahead and make sure you do your research so you're utilizing the best product that's for your family. And with that,
So before we go to questions,
Yeah.
there's just one thing we didn't talk about was the net price calculator.
oh yes.
So, and Emily chime in here, but I want to just talk to you guys about something called the net price calculator. Has anybody gone out to a college's website and seen a net price calculator, or what we call the NPC? I'm going to tell you that every college in the United States is required to have a net price calculator. That is a federal requirement. We're not eligible to utilize Title IV funds unless we have one. So every college has one. And I want to tell you, as a parent and for you guys, it is a great tool. It is a great resource because the government gives us a template, and it's a cruddy template, but if your school is using that template, it probably won't be as much fun, and you probably only want to run through it once. But most colleges and universities are using pretty sophisticated software so that you can really get a really good idea of what your student is going to be eligible to receive. I want to say this as well. It's going to ask for a ton of information, but you are not required to give any information. In fact, I would recommend that unless you want to give your information, just do it as a guest. It might say, please enter your name. We need your name. You do not have to do that. That is absolutely a no-no with the U.S. Department of Education. And if you think you have to, call me, call Emily, and we'll tell you how to get around it because you cannot do that as a college. But you can go in and you can, and I hate to say this, so I'm going to take my FA hat off and I'm going to walk away from the mic and I'm going to be a parent right now, is you can play with it. And you can see, what if I had this GPA? What if I had this? What if I have that? So I encourage you to play with them. Go out to that college's website because based on a GPA or based on an interest or based on maybe a religious affiliation, you're going to see what that award looks like versus some other information that you enter. So I encourage you to go to the colleges that you're interested in and play with those net price calculators. As a parent, I did it all the time. As an aid administrator, I'm like, yeah, you don't really need to do that. But I'm telling you, do it. It's a lot of fun. You can look at it. You can see what I'm going to be eligible for. If I have a 3.0, if I have a 3.9, all kinds of different variables out there. So please go out and utilize those net price calculators. Did I miss anything with the NPC? No, I think. All right, so let's go to questions.